Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andrew Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Bender and special guest Ted Weeson from Brain Scratch Comms to discuss the announcement trailer for Pokkén Tournament. So let's get started. Alright guys, so we just got a brand new trailer for Pokkén Tournament, which is actually a game we knew about exactly a year ago to the day, but we didn't fully know what it was back then. But as it turns out, what we thought it was is exactly what it is, and it appears to be basically a Tekken fighting game with Pokemon. In fact, it's actually being made by the Pokkén team. So I thought, let's give our quick impressions of this before we dive into the nitty-gritty. So what do you guys think of this announcement?
I think it's interesting. It's always interesting when Pokemon branches out into new genres and whether or not it's successful or not, because they've been successful with the roguelikes. They've been successful even with the strategy RPGs with Pokemon Conquest. And I'd love to see what they can do with a Pokemon fighting game. It seems like a really good fit. And having experienced creators in the form of both the Tekken team, as you said, Andre, as well as Soul Calibur members working on it, I think this could be something fun.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because, I think a lot of people, especially if they've been playing Pokemon since the very beginning, have kind of wanted to play a Pokemon battle, something like this, where you don't just sort of like do turn-based type stuff, but you actually, see the Pokemon fight sort of similarly to how they do in the anime. And this is, I think, the first time you really get to have something that gets as full-out insane as that. So I'm really excited just to see that, just to see, like, what sort of, how balls to the walls everything gets.
Yeah, this is just a very kind of unexpected in general, even though we expected this from the last trailer, which really didn't show off much. So for me though, like, I'm not a big fighting game person. I'm not a Tekken guy. I love Smash Brothers. That's really the only opportunity we've had to play as Pokemon characters, in a fighting game style game. With that said though, even though, it may not personally appeal to me, I am very intrigued by what they're doing here. It is such a different setting for Pokemon, or Pokemon characters. And I always like seeing Nintendo try new things. And we haven't ever seen them really do a hardcore fighting game like this. The closest thing we've had before would be Killer Instinct, which was developed by Rare. This is totally unusual and I think cool for multiple reasons.
Nintendo has done a really good job of branching out, trying new things, and getting help from other developers in order to do that. Bringing in developers that are well known for certain genres, and then having them use that experience in order to make new entries in their lineup. And they've done that before in the past, but it seems like it's really clicking this time, because I haven't, with a lot of the more recent collaborations, I haven't had any problems with them whatsoever. I find a lot of them to be really fun, and it just gives me hope for this one that it will match up and be a very fun fighter with some interesting modes and presumably a really good fighting system.
Mm-hmm. It's just odd to, well, not necessarily odd, but more interesting to see these sort of combinations that, like, on the surface you wouldn't think would work. Like Hyrule Warriors. When I saw that first trailer, I was like, what? And then, everything I've seen then makes me look like this game looks pretty fun. And, the same sort of thing. If you, had asked me 5 years ago, what would you think of a Pokemon Tekken crossover? I'd be like, that sounds awful. But I look at this trailer, and it looks like, it looks pretty fun to play. And, this is coming from someone, I am absolutely awful at 2D fighting games. Like, I cannot play Street Fighter to save my life. I've tried Ultimate versus Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I suck at that too. But, this is something that I would, this is making the 8-year-old in me just giddy with excitement.
Well, you touched on something interesting there, where, it doesn't look like that out of place as you might expect it to. And I think part of that reason is because they're using, humanoid, and more specifically, like the fighting type Pokemon, so far from what we've seen. We've seen 3 Pokemon so far between the 2 trailers. They're all fighting types, and they all look humanoid basically. So it really isn't like that different from what we've seen before in most fighting games. And I guess that's a good way to segue into that, I suppose. Into what else, what other characters you might see here, and do you think it will be just restricted to the fighting class?
It makes sense to restrict it to the fighting class. I think there could be some other as you said, humanoid-like Pokemon to fit into this. But I think, on the whole, I think most of the cast is going to be fighting types. However, I did see one of the developers or something like that, something mentioned on Twitter where they're basically asking fans what Pokemon they're interested in seeing in Pokkén Tournament.
Right.
I do agree that there probably will be a lot of fighting type Pokemon for this game, if only just because I think the fighting type Pokemon would more easily lend themselves to this sort of thing, because like a lot of like flying types, for instance, like I don't think I could see Crobat or Pidgeotto or whoever working in this sort of fighting style, but I don't think it'll be like completely restricted to fighting type Pokemon. Like I think, you know, there are too many Pokemon. There's 700 of them.
Right.
So, you know, I don't think that they'll limit the roster to just fighting types. Like, I think any of the starters are a relatively safe pick. Stuff like Mewtwo or Alakazam, I think. But I would be surprised to see some of the more out there Pokemon. Like, I don't think we'll see, like, Steelix or Wailord or anything like that, for sure. Although that would be awesome. Wailord for Pokkén Tournament, make it happen.
I will say, Ted, you just gave me an idea. Fighting on the back of Wailord is one of the stages.
That would be great. Yes.
Just for something completely weird. I agree. There likely will be other types, but I gotta say, a lot of the Pokemon, I've looked through all the fighting types, their final evolutions, and seeing what kind of what we could look at. And even just among all the fighting types, we have a lot of really interesting potential. I mean, we have the sort of classic fighting styles of Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan. You have sort of the grappler types with Throw and Sock, even sumo wrestler type with Hariyama, and even the crazy Mexican wrestler types with Hawlucha. So even just among the fighters, we have all these different fighting styles being represented, which is a lot like, you know, typical fighting games where they bring in all these different styles. So it's funny how well they all mix together. The question I have for the fighting system is whether it's going to apply typing to how well Pokemon fight each other.
Huh.
So, example, with Lucario fighting Blaziken in the first reveal, Lucario has a steel typing, Blaziken obviously has a fire typing. Does Blaziken's fire moves do more damage to Lucario, or for the sake of balancing for a fighting game, are they just going to disregard that?
I feel like they would have to disregard it almost, just because it's hard enough balancing a fighting game and introducing different, you know, character attributes, you know, when paired against another. I feel like we just complicate it too much. With that said, that would be unique, right?
True.
Well, it depends. I know a lot of fighting games have the sort of systems where you have multiple characters out at once. Well, not out at once, but I know in games like Marvel vs. Capcom, you pick 2 or 3 characters and you can switch between them throughout the fight, which would make sense in the sense of a Pokemon battle, where, you know, you return the Lucario if you're up against the Blaziken, and maybe you'll bring out Greninja or something like that. So if they have a system, I don't know if Tekken specifically has a system like that.
Tekken Tag Tournament, that would actually fit in perfectly.
Yeah, so, you know, I think if they were to do sort of like the type matchup system, I think that that would work pretty well with, you know, the system where you do tag in and out. If it's just a strict one-on-one thing, I would probably agree with you, Andre, where, you know, it would be impossible to have a balanced match
Right.
if they try to include the type matchups, especially if it's as severe of an advantage as it is in the main series.
You know, that's kind of an awesome idea you had, Ted. That actually would make perfect sense to have, like, at the least, like, a tag mode. And then, yeah, have those differences come into it. Because that would add, like, a level of strategy. Fairly, you know, deeper strategy at least. But yeah, it's like, do I want to save this Pokemon, you know, to go up against a different one, you know, in this match? You know, I mean, maybe they'd expand it even beyond just having like 2 characters that you switch between. Maybe you have, I mean, if you want to go with a Pokemon route, maybe you have 6. You know,
I can't see him going 6.
Yeah, it's a little bit extreme, but
there is precedent for all this. We have examples in the main games of double battles, triple battles, rotation battles, and then just the whole fact that you typically have your team of 6, then you pick 3 to go out into the fight. And so there is plenty of examples of this type of system in Pokemon that you can easily transfer over to Pokkén Tournament. The other thing I'm wondering, though, is we said that obviously they're working with the guys doing Tekken and Soul Calibur. Is the fighting style going to be closer to Soul Calibur or Tekken? If I had to bet money, it's probably going to be closer to Soul Calibur with maybe a few elements of Tekken in there. Mainly that I don't think they're going to use Tekken's style of each button controlling a single limb. It just, I don't think, I think that's might be a little too complex for the Pokemon, not the Pokemon crowd, but for just a Nintendo game where they're trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Well, we brought this up before the discussion, but it's not possible because Machamp has 6 limbs and there's only 4 buttons on the controller.
Shoulder buttons.
Yeah, true, I suppose.
No, it's an interesting point.
If you go off of that, I mean, yeah, they can't do it exactly like that. But, the trailer itself mentions Tekken and not Soul Calibur. So it makes me think that, in other or maybe most ways, it would hew closer to that. But who knows? They could be going for a completely different style. I haven't played enough of Tekken to really say. I have played a fair amount of Soul Calibur though. And I really do like Soul Calibur's fighting system, so if it hewed closer to that, I'd be fine with it.
And we're already seeing hints of that. I think, again, Pokemon seems to work so well for a fighting game because you have this sort of basic attacks and then, the different combos you pull off, like in Street Fighter or Tekken or whatever, unleashing super attacks. There you go for Pokemon. You do a combo or a button input, and all of a sudden you do a Lucario's Aura Sphere or something like that. It just works so well.
Yep.
Okay, well now you just put an idea in my head: is do you get to choose which moves that you have, or like what combos or specials you have, like in Pokemon? So if you don't want a Lucario with an Aura Sphere, but you want him with high jump kick instead. Could you swap them out so quarter circle heavy is now high jump kick instead of Aura Sphere or something?
That is interesting. Whether they'll actually limit the characters to just 4 moves like the games, or if they'll just have it completely open for the characters to use.
Yeah, that would introduce another layer of complexity. Can you imagine that you could switch your moves and they have different elemental abilities or advantages or disadvantages? This could quickly become the most complicated fighting game of all time.
Yeah, basically, because then it's just the Pokemon metagame, but with
right.
another layer added to it of the fighting game mechanics. And
right.
it would. Oh man, trying to set up a tier list for that would be
jeez. That would be something.
Now the question I have for you guys is, what do you think of the settings we've seen so far for these fights? We've seen 3 so far.
Yeah, I guess I would almost stretch that just to the visuals in general, because so far it seems like they're all really realistic looking. All the settings look like real places, which is something that Pokemon doesn't usually do. They're all very stylized. And this game seems to be presenting itself very seriously.
Yeah, the game does, from the footage that we've seen, there's this weird filter over most of the gameplay, but the game does look really, really nice. The model quality especially is top-notch. But it does sort of seem... It reminds me of a lot of the Stadium games in that, in most of the Pokemon... handheld titles, things are very stylized, but if you play something like Pokemon Stadium or Coliseum or Battle Network, I think was the Wii one, they tend to be a lot more detailed in the environments there, so I think that just might what they'd be going for, more like a more realistic interpretation of the environments that we see in the handheld Pokemon games is what I sort of noticed.
Right.
Yeah, the buildings in the background of that farm, it look really they look realistic. They look properly sized. They got the windmills in the windmills there. It looks great. Even the city. When you first look at the city, there's a part of me that questioned, are they just taking Pokemon and putting them in an AR setting? Because it looked that good, especially with that whole visual filter over it, where it sort of looks sun bleached.
Right.
But no, this is completely all made by them, and it seems to be a really powerful, really interesting system. And even they're not going to just. They're going to really play with the environments. Yeah, we already got the city setting, we got a farm setting, we have at the end you can see a volcano setting, and it looks like we're going to be going all around the world of Pokemon in order to really present as many levels as possible.
Yeah, there's a ton of locations they can choose from, just as there are a ton of Pokemon they can choose from, really. Now, one thing that I find interesting is that this has only been announced so far for arcades, which there's still a thriving scene for that in, well, I don't know if thriving is the right word, but a large enough scene for that in Japan. Not so much elsewhere. I mean, I guess what do you guys think about that, and what do you think of it potentially coming to Wii U or some other system? Do you think it will?
The way fighting games usually work in Japan is that they go to the arcades and then later down the line they get ported to consoles. That's just how it's always worked. And so I don't really see this as being any different, but taking that into account, they've already said that this is a 2015 game in arcades. At the earliest, I don't think we're going to get this until 2016, so we still have a ways to go, but I do think if it was to come to console and then come to the US. So I do think it is going to be quite a while if we do get this in the States. It's probably going to be another 2 years.
2016 might be a little bit late. Like, I think we might get it holiday.
Yeah.
2015, I think, would probably be good. Because I can't see a game like this staying in Japan. Like, I think, almost every single Pokemon spin-off that I can think of has gotten across shores at some point or another. Especially something like this, I think that there would be a priority for it. Because, this is the type of Pokemon game that people have been wanting since Gen 1. I think that it's likely. It's just, I just want to know, like, if there's going to be any significant differences between the console and the arcade versions, because I'm not sure how any of that whole system works. So
the most likely scenario, I'd say, is, they'll bring it out in the arcades and then they'll add in some sort of story mode or some other modes to flesh it out for the home releases. I think typically what they usually do is from my experience. But yeah, I think you're right. At the latest 2016, but it would be a really good holiday title. And as we can see, this is a game with a lot of potential.
Yeah, well, I think the most interesting thing is just by virtue of it coming to the arcade, I think it just goes to show how seriously they are taking this game. As a fighting game specifically. This isn't Smash Brothers with Pokemon. This is a serious fighting game. So yeah, I think that's just kind of neat in and of itself. All right, guys. Well, do you have any final thoughts or any topics you want to touch on before we wrap things up here?
Well, I'm just looking forward to the 700 character roster, which I'm just messing. I know that that's not going to happen, but I think that's just my biggest question: is how many Pokemon are they going to stuff into this?
If I had to guess, it's probably going to be limited to about at least 20, at most 25.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking 20 to 30 myself.
Just because if you look at most first fighting games, the rosters are typically pretty small. And, we could even have as little as 15, just because this is the first to come out.
If they go with the Ted's idea of, being able to have, at least a partner, if not multiple, they probably need a larger roster than just 15.
That's true. That is very true. So, yeah, like I said, I think a good estimate would be 20 to 30.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that wraps up our discussion on Pokkén Tournament, so thanks, guys, for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, which you can find links to in the description below. So go away and keep up to date on everything we post. And, of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for more on Pokkén Tournament and other things gaming as well. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.